Hi there, I'm Ahsan Ali Shaw, and you're watching me on YouTube and Facebook Live. Today we are going to talk about how social hierarchy works and naturally imposed on the society. When I say social hierarchy, then it is important to discuss hi- uh, the pyramid of hierarchy, which was I like the definition and the presentation of Abraham Maslow, and he presented it well. And some people call it the needs theory. The reason they call it needs theory is because he laid the foundation of his theory on the basis of needs, human needs, and he divides the human needs in five categories, and that's are the basis of social hierarchy. Physiological need is at the bottom of the pyramid. That we all need some we all need food and water to to satisfy our hunger and appetite. And second is when your belly is filled and you need a shelter, a house, a roof to cover yourself and protect yourself. When you have a house, then you move to third need is to love and belonging need. You want a family, you want to raise family. And when you have family, then the fourth is you want to live in the society. You want to be socially accepted. And the fifth is self-actualization. Then after that you would reach at the highest level of creativity and knowing yourself. It doesn't work the step-by-step process. There were some flaws in his theory, and he said the hierarchy works in the ascending orders. But if you look at it in our society, the needs are good, but the order isn't good. Many people, if you look around in our society, many people are struggling with different types of needs at the same time. For instance, people are struggling uh, to to satisfy their appetite, to fill their belly. At the same time, they are dealing with creative issues, and they are dealing with social acceptability issues. And the pyramid of the need structure is good and is the foundation of hierarchy in our society, in my view. But but the order is different. We are dealing with different types of needs at the same time. And that's what we are going to discuss today: hierarchy, social hierarchy, or is there something else? And my guest is Edward Konowicz, and he has joined us from Virginia, United States.
Hi,
Hey, Ed,
everybody.
how
How
are
are
you
you?
doing?
I'm
I'm
doing
doing
okay.
good.
I was a little late today.
Hey,
Sorry about
Jackie.
that.
Oh, no problem. And so, how would you approach hierarchy?
Well,
And
I think hierarchy,
mhm,
when it comes to damage or lack of health,
hey, Linda.
is very significant. Now, if
Mhm,
hierarchy is working well, it
mhm,
disappears. It's like
mhm,
breathing. If we're breathing okay, no
mhm,
problem. If the
mhm,
hierarchy is okay, no problem. And
mhm,
there's many levels of hierarchy. When you were talking
mhm,
about Maslow, we're
mhm,
talking about self actualization
mhm,
and different needs, a hierarchy of needs. We also
mhm,
have social hierarchies, family
mhm.
hierarchies, work
Yes.
hierarchies,
Mhm,
government hierarchies. And hierarchies naturally arise in most human beings, not so much in animals,
mhm,
but I think people underestimate how much damage a wrongful hierarchy can do. It's
mhm,
like if the father is a drunk
mhm,
and or a drug addict
mhm,
as in charge of the family, he could do a lot of damage.
mhm,
If the father is a hardworking, responsible, affectionate, giving person,
mhm,
we it disappears. The hierarchy doesn't mean anything. Just what we need to get and do takes precedence. So a good
Mhm.
hierarchy disappears.
Mhm.
A bad hierarchy becomes oppressive and does a lot of damage, which is the state we're in today. There's a group of people trying to arrange a global hierarchy, trying to
Mhm.
impose that on everyone. And it's doing a lot of damage.
Mhm.
The best hierarchy is when you don't notice any hierarchy. But there's a natural movement towards hierarchy. And I want to build a new concept because you and I could sit here and
Mhm.
like thousands of other people and discuss what
Mhm.
has been discussed for
Mhm.
decades or 100 years. But
Mhm.
let me introduce a new concept. Hierarchies form and they are imposed, but you should have a choice or consent. And your consent is not you're a sovereign being. I, I, I don't think anyone has reached the level of a god to really be a sovereign being.
Sovereign. Yes.
So what the concept really is and has been in culture
Mhm.
is peer. If I don't accept your hierarchy, we should be in a peer to peer relationship, meaning we're not going to interact much, but
Mhm.
when we interact, we're going to interact as equals. We're going to
Mhm.
pretend we're equals since we can't negotiate a hierarchy. So there's three stages of hierarchies.
Okay.
There's one in which a good one forms. It's the father's good guy, or the mother's a good woman, or the boss at work is a good guy. And the hierarchy disappears because all we have is our work and our tasks and our play to do. The hierarchy is just there being slightly helpful. It is not
So
there.
the way you are describing hierarchy and categorizing it, is it in the family hierarchy or the work hierarchy,
It's
or it's the
all.
same? It's all.
I'm
All.
dealing with all concepts. That hierarchy is
Mhm.
really important. And there's
Mhm.
three types. There are the
Mhm.
good hierarchies, and they
Mhm.
basically disappear
Mhm.
until you need a decision made. But
Mhm.
basically, a good hierarchy is working so efficiently, you're not aware of it. Sort of
Mhm.
like your body, you're not aware of your heart,
Mhm.
you're not aware of your liver until it actually does something wrong.
Yes.
You have natural hierarchies that disappear. The same with your
Mhm.
ancestors or your
Mhm.
gods or whatever you want to call it. The gods are good, they disappear. You
Mhm.
don't have to talk about them. It's when you have a bad hierarchy that you have problems and disease. And this is
Mhm.
more significant. I lived
Just
long
like
enough.
just like the current circumstances, they are getting
Yeah.
out of hands and they are imposing the wrong hierarchy of imposing everyone to mask, to wear mask and vaccination. And it's a bad example of hierarchy.
Yeah, I would say the biggest cause of disease is a
Mhm.
wrongful hierarchy. Could
Mhm.
be a wrongful hierarchy in the family. It could be a wrongful hierarchy in the neighborhood. It could be a
Mhm.
wrongful hierarchy in government. The biggest cause of disease and problems is a
Mhm.
wrongful hierarchy. So we have three.
Mhm.
We have a good hierarchy that tends to disappear. You don't notice it much.
Mhm.
We have an imposed hierarchy that's not natural, that
Mhm.
you didn't agree to, and is being
Mhm.
imposed. It could
Mhm.
have good and bad elements. And
Mhm.
finally, we have a peer to peer relationship. We're not going to recognize the wrongful hierarchy. And this is where consent and freedom is. If some wrongful hierarchy tries to impose, we should simply say, no, I'm going to
Mhm.
treat you as an equal. You're going to treat
Mhm.
me as an equal, not a
Mhm.
sovereign. So if I'm in
Mhm.
court, I'm going to treat that judge as an equal
Mhm.
because I'm not accepting his hierarchy.
Mhm.
I'm not a
But it doesn't work.
sovereign. See,
But it
when you
doesn't
say
work
you're a
like.
sovereign, you're
Mhm.
implying you're the hierarchy.
Mhm.
When there's no hierarchy, then we're with peers. And this is an important concept because so many people are pushing this concept of sovereign.
Mhm.
And I say, no, that's a false conference, it's a
Mhm.
false concept.
Mhm.
Hierarchies that are good disappear. Wrongful hierarchies cause disease and a lot of problems. and you should have a choice, which is if you don't want to belong to a hierarchy, it's not
Mhm.
that you're sovereign,
Mhm.
it's you're going to treat the people as peer to peer, a jury of his peers, which is
Mhm.
the jury is not the official judge is not acting as a hierarchy, is acting as an equal. And
Mhm.
so we have this important concept in law and in life when a wrongful hierarchy, such as a judge, appears, then you have a right to ask for a jury, a trial by jury, which is a
Mhm.
trial by your peers,
Mhm.
which is you're not accepting the hierarchy.
Mhm.
And I think that's a
You
very
want
interesting point. Same thing
you
with a
want the
family.
judgment. You want the judgment of your peers
Yeah,
instead of one person.
right. If you reject the judgment of your mother and father, then
Mhm.
it's not you're in charge. It's now you're treating them as a peer.
Mhm.
And people do this. They call their parents by their first name.
Mhm.
And a lot of parents don't mind this as long as we have
Mhm.
respect and
Yes.
peer to peer.
Mhm.
So you have a hierarchy or peer to peer. You have two types of hierarchies. You
Mhm.
have a good hierarchy that tends to disappear because it's doing
Mhm.
good things. You don't notice
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
Then you have a wrongful hierarchy that tends to
When you start
impose
noticing.
and cause disease. And of course, you
Mhm.
have to have a hierarchy of values,
Mhm.
Maslow. If you have a
Mhm.
wrongful hierarchy of
Mhm.
values or priorities, that causes harm. You notice it. If you
Mhm.
have a good hierarchy of values or
Mhm.
priorities, then you don't
Mhm.
notice it. It disappears.
Mhm. I
So we
think
want disappearing hierarchies.
I want Maslow's need theory and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think it is the foundation of any social setup in our society. If you look at it.
Yeah, I like Maslow. I read
Mhm.
Maslow like 30 years ago, and
Mhm.
I liked him. He's been discredited because today
Mhm.
everything's biochemistry or inheritance. And I think Maslow has a good attitude. He's trying to say what is a instead of saying what is a mentally ill person, he says what
Mhm.
is a healthy person.
Mhm.
So he places the emphasis on let's establish the goals of a healthy person and stop
Mhm.
talking about people and their flaws and their mental illness. Let's talk about what it means to be a
To be
healthy,
healthy.
self-actualized person. And I like that
Mhm.
emphasis. I like
Mhm.
what's called positive thinking. I also like critical thinking.
Mhm.
But I think Maslow was a good emphasis. And today that's called cognitive behavior therapy, which is
Mhm.
your concern with the cognition or the awareness of the person. So you're concerned with how they establish their priorities. Now, when I
Mhm.
was younger, there was a movement in sociology and psychology, and this was
Mhm.
called values clarification, related
Mhm.
to Maslow is
Mhm.
we want to clarify, not impose my values on you. If
Mhm.
I'm a psychologist, I'm not supposed to impose my values, but I want you to help you clarify your values and find out where you're in contradiction to your values.
Mhm.
So, but and it's fine. You could deal with the psychological Maslow self-actualization models.
Mhm.
I'm a little
Mhm.
more concerned with the political ones because I
Mhm.
think they affect people more.
Mhm. The reason Maslow's there was flaws in his theory that he thinks that the hierarchy works only in the ascending order, but ascending order is I think is the problem because today or in his time or before his time or people used to face this ascending order problem that once your belly is filled then you move to the next level. I think
Right.
the problem is the people are dealing with different issues at the same time, and that is, I think, the order is good, yeah, but the way we describe it is not good. We are dealing with different issues at the same time, and this is the social hierarchy. And what you talk about is different types of hierarchy, and it is also good that the work hierarchy and the hierarchy at the family hierarchy. And the good and bad hierarchy is when the good hierarchy is when you don't notice it, and the bad hierarchy is when you start noticing things, when you are being judged, and when the hierarchy of the other person is imposed upon you, just like hierarchy of the tech companies today and the companies today, that you have to wear mask and being vaccinated. And the uh, vaccinated passport, I think, is also one of the main issues today.
Yeah, I think
Mhm,
there's two underlying factors to
mhm,
hierarchy.
mhm,
What is legitimate information,
mhm,
which is today most people question the information they're getting from the government and medical authorities, that much of
mhm,
the information is not legitimate. And
mhm,
second, what is your prior order of priorities? I mean, even
mhm,
if you got a disease going around and you put a lockdown and you bankrupt people and they start dying from starvation, they can't afford food or shelter, the
mhm,
priority may not be disease. The
mhm,
priority may be food and shelter.
mhm.
So
Yes.
the hierarchy rests upon two assessments: what's
Mhm,
legitimate information
mhm,
and what's misinformation, and what's your
mhm,
priority, what comes first.
mhm,
And a wrongful hierarchy is based on propaganda, which is misinformation, and wrong priorities.
mhm,
I mean, hunger is a thing we don't have to spend much time solving. You just have to get food to the people who need it. It's not like
mhm,
a disease where you have to find out causes, vulnerabilities, possible remedies.
mhm.
And yet, more people die from hunger and from
Then,
exposure, a lack of proper drinking water, a lack of proper sanitation. Why is
mhm,
our priority viruses? This is
mhm,
crazy. It's
yes, it doesn't
absolutely
make it.
crazy that the
Mhm,
number one priority has become a virus. Every day in the
mhm,
newspaper, on the news, all the news anchors are saying the number one priority is a virus. And the answer is no. What about the people being bombed in Gaza?
mhm.
And then the Israelis
What
say,
about?
well, they're shooting rockets. You say, well, yeah, how are you tolerating Hamas since Hamas is letting the
Mhm,
Israelis now bomb buildings and families and everything?
mhm.
Why do you see this as successful? So
What about
there's
the
other priorities besides viruses.
what about
And
the lack of clean water and lack of food in African countries, and
right,
people
not
are
only
not
lack of
prepared.
food, lack
Mhm,
of peace. You know,
mhm,
you have guerrilla warfare, or you have civil war, or you
mhm.
have crime in
Yes,
Chicago, South Side
yes,
Chicago, tremendous amount of crime. The priority is not a virus. The priority
mhm.
is the
Yes,
stopping the crime.
yes,
This is
stopping
what's
the
so
crime.
crazy is
Mhm,
that the world's hierarchy has become so criminal.
mhm,
They're saying the number one concern priority is a
mhm,
virus.
mhm.
And it's just simply not true.
Yes, absolutely right,
Yeah.
Jackie. Absolutely, we are being distracted from our
So a
crazy.
wrongful hierarchy has wrongful priorities.
Mhm.
And we're
Wrongful
seeing
hierarchy is wrongful priority.
and they not disseminating information. They're giving
Mhm,
misinformation. Number of deaths, an incorrect testing method, not allowing other doctors to peer review.
mhm,
So a wrongful hierarchy can literally destroy much of the world.
mhm.
So
And it
how we
is doing
form
so.
hierarchies
Mhm,
and deal with them is important. And I'm saying the rebellion is not to become sovereign. That's what
mhm,
the counter culture or the counterintelligence controlled opposition says. Oh, you're a sovereign. And I say no. You're
mhm,
now in a peer-to-peer relationship. You don't accept the hierarchy, and now you're going to try to negotiate from a peer-to-peer relationship. And
mhm,
we see that in American law. If you reject the judge
mhm.
as
Then
wrongful
you're.
hierarchy, then you can then have a jury by your peers. You're now
Mhm,
going to a peer-to-peer relationship.
mhm.
And
But
it's
I think
important to
uh, it is important to have a peer-to-peer relationship, but we don't see it often in the political world, in the political environment or the social political environment.
Well, the peer-to-peer is instead of rebellion, I'm saying
Mhm,
peer-to-peer. You
mhm,
make it clear you're not accepting the wrongful hierarchy, and you can give your reasons. I don't
mhm,
think viruses are the major problem in the world. I don't think
mhm,
vaccinations work. I think they do harm. You
mhm,
can give your reasons, but then the hierarchy tries to impose. It
yeah,
may be censorship, it may be fines, penalties, arrests.
mhm.
And so establishing a hierarchy or a correct hierarchy is in some ways the major issue in the world,
Now
even
the
in my
question
life.
is, now the question is, how can we uh, correct this wrongful hierarchy?
Well, we
Yeah.
have to stop. We have to start the precedent of peer-to-peer legal thinking,
Mhm,
which most people don't have legal minds. They can't
mhm,
analyze. Oh, when you want a jury by your peers, you're rejecting the hierarchy of the judge.
mhm,
And when you don't get along with someone
mhm,
who's trying to impose a hierarchy, you treat them with the courtesy of a peer-to-peer relationship. They may not agree, so the battle is for you to sustain the peer-to-peer relationship
mhm,
because you don't want to impose your hierarchy.
mhm. But I think in real life, in the social political environment, it doesn't work that whatever the system decides or political environment decides, people have to follow it. And a very
Well,
few,
it's not totally, not
mhm,
totally. You can talk to a policeman with
mhm,
courtesy, explain your
mhm,
position, and a lot of
mhm,
policemen will engage in a peer-to-peer relationship,
mhm,
because they're sensing you're not against law, you're not against good behavior, you're not rebelling. And we see this even with a doctor. You go to a doctor, the doctor
mhm,
tries to impose some drug or diagnosis you disagree with. You say to
mhm,
the doctor, I'm going to need a second opinion.
mhm,
When you say I need a second opinion, you're treating
mhm,
the doctor as a peer to peer relationship, which is,
mhm,
I don't accept your opinion, I need to find another one.
mhm.
And so that's where the battle is. The
Yeah.
battle is a wrongful hierarchy tries to impose, and you have to now sustain a peer to peer relationship. And
In
whether
order.
you have enough power to do that is another issue,
Mhm,
because a lot of that is your communication skills. And I do
mhm.
think there is personal power, because I said
Yeah.
there is a hierarchy to build your
Mhm,
personal power, which is get rid of the lies and misinformation,
mhm,
try to seek some truth, avoid disrespect or unnecessary conflict, cite what is wrong so you have a precedent, a momentum saying, well, no, this is not correct. You have a momentum to back you because you've been saying that for 5 or 10 years.
mhm,
Know whether your environment is hostile or not. If you got a hostile environment, don't go there.
mhm. I
You're
think
not
you
going to
ha-
be able to project that.
I
And
think you
finally,
should
you
be.
can't make someone do what is correct.
I
You
think
may
you
know
should
what's
have.
correct,
Mhm.
but
I
you
think you
can't make
should have.
someone do what's correct.
I think you should have a keen sensibility in order to know the difference between the correct hierarchy and the bad, wrongful hierarchy. If things are hostile, as you are saying, then don't go there.
Yeah, avoid
Yeah.
hostile territory,
Yeah.
hostile hierarchies.
Hmm. And the
Uh,
conflict,
right, and then there's
because.
these more
Mhm,
spiritual questions. Can you
mhm,
establish? And I think you can. I think it's a
mhm,
reasonable goal
mhm,
to establish peer-to-peer relationships or little relationships with people who want to impose a hierarchy.
mhm.
Not
And
sovereign.
yes, I
I'm
like
not
the
going to be a
you,
hierarchy.
yeah, you mentioned a very good thing here about the spiritual connection or spirituality. I think spirituality plays a very important role here. When you can't deal with the conflict, the hostile environment, you can't deal with it. So I think that's where the spiritual role comes in. You have to detach yourself, not to impact you personally. if they start eating you, then I think it will destroy you internally. It would destroy your creativity, your peace of mind, and your peace of soul. So
Well,
you
a
have
large
to
part
detach you.
of consciousness or
Mhm,
religiosity,
mhm,
spirituality, whatever you want to call
mhm,
it, is recognizing consciousness has momentum. Like
mhm,
you go to Saudi Arabia, they've been
mhm,
chopping off people's heads for having
yes,
different religious beliefs for hundreds
mhm,
of years. So
mhm,
there's a large momentum, which is you
mhm,
want to avoid momentums. You don't want to
mhm,
stop a train coming
yes,
down the mountain.
mhm,
That train has a momentum of all the cars behind it, all the work behind it. And so you want to avoid the
the con
areas
you
where
avoid the
you're
conflict that could impact you personally, that could
right.
impact your peace of mind. So you can't deal with it. So stop. You should stop it. You should stop impact. I don't know how to describe it in a better way, but
Well,
you have to. Mhm.
Jackie asks a very good question. How do we reconnect with our personal power? Well, it's
Yeah, it's a
hard to
very good question.
reconnect. We build it.
Mhm,
We build it by first of all avoiding wrongful hierarchies,
mhm,
by proper intuition, insight,
mhm,
imagination,
mhm.
and inspiration.
Spiritual, spirituality.
We learn to eat correctly. We learn what
Mhm,
we can do, our
mhm,
timing. It's a subtle buildup of our personal power, and most
mhm,
of our personal power occurs at a distance,
mhm,
which is it's the American Indians, particularly the Sioux, called it their peace shield. And they
mhm,
spent time building their shield. A lot of people don't know this. The Sioux were
mhm,
warriors that defeated the U.S. Army at times. And the
mhm,
shield they built from buffalo hide could stop a bullet.
mhm,
And good warriors could actually use arrows better than guns. They could
mhm,
actually fire successful arrows and at a damaging range. Now,
mhm,
their concept of a peace shield was they had to obey certain religious standards and uphold certain amount of honor,
mhm,
which was part of their shield.
mhm,
And the story of
mhm,
Crazy Horse, and why it was called Crazy Horse, would take his
mhm,
horse and ride in front of the U.S. cavalry so they would empty their ammunition.
mhm,
And then when the Sioux would engage, the cavalry had already tried to shoot Crazy Horse, and Crazy Horse supposedly had enough of a peace shield,
mhm,
enough standards, they couldn't kill him. And that's what's hard to believe, that we have a shield at a distance from us that we don't sense, and it gets weaker.
mhm, mhm,
Part of it is knowing when to contract ourselves, limit our interaction and activities to rest and recover, and when we
mhm,
can expand ourselves. And of course, in hostile territory, we have to contract ourselves. But
mhm,
to get in touch with your personal power, you got to build it, which is
mhm,
you got to have good standards. If you're
mhm,
throwing your personal power
mhm,
to a government or to a religion, you're not going to
mhm,
feel your personal power because you consented
mhm,
to support an external hierarchy. There's a
mhm,
difference between supporting, which is going and vote and contributing and verbally promoting someone, and
mhm,
staying out of the way of a hierarchy, not to engage it.
mhm,
So a lot of people waste their personal power in
mhm.
supporting a wrongful hierarchy. Now, how
Yeah,
you get in touch with your personal power, I think, is your health. I think
yeah.
generally how you feel, your healthiness, is going to
Mhm,
give you a major measurement of your personal
mhm,
power. You don't feel good,
mhm,
don't do much, not
mhm.
complicated.
And
And
sometimes people, and sometimes I think people engage with the conflict that they cannot change. It start impacting their health, their well-being, and their peace of mind. So they lose their creativity and their self-actualization ability
well, because
when they
they're
because
trying to
they
project.
They are
They're
trying to,
project
yes,
as a sovereign. They're trying to
yes.
project a hierarchy. Even
Mhm,
though we may be correct, we
mhm,
can't project it. We
mhm.
have to go to peer with another
Yes,
hierarchy.
yes.
And with personal power, you'll find that with a lot of people, you have learned or capable of going to a peer peer relationship and
Mhm,
stop their ability to impose a hierarchy.
mhm,
But a hierarchy forms naturally. People
mhm,
get together, they
mhm,
assess each other, they badmouth some people,
mhm,
they praise others, and they form a hierarchy. And
mhm,
if a hierarchy is forming around you that you
mhm,
don't like, you got to go peer to peer and start avoiding those people because
mhm.
they're forming a wrongful hierarchy and putting you at the bottom. What can kill you, and the
Is the
expression is
conflict.
low man, what can
Mhm,
kill you is if you're put on the bottom roll or rung of a
mhm,
hierarchy. That's the hierarchy you got to get away from. The
mhm. Yes,
hierarchy that treats you at the bottom.
yes. It treats you lower than your standard. Once
Right. Now, you don't mind if you're
you're,
learning something, you're
yeah,
going to
yeah,
apprentice, you go to school or
mhm,
training. If you're on the
mhm.
bottom and you're
You're
being
learning
treated
something.
with respect and the
Mhm,
priorities are good, the knowledge
mhm.
is good, that's fine.
Yes,
But if you're at a
yes.
bottom of a hierarchy that's giving misinformation, propaganda,
Mhm.
and
And
has
impacting
rotten
your ego,
values,
your
it's time to leave.
self-respect, and it's not good. Yes.
Yeah, the people that survived Nazi Germany, many of
Mhm.
them left. They had to leave the rotten hierarchy.
Yes. And
And
I
same
think
thing with marriages. Sometimes a
mhm,
spouse turns out to be dishonest, a narcissist. Then,
narcissistic.
then you
Mhm,
have to leave because a rotten hierarchy is being formed. And why I wanted to
mhm.
do this talk
Yes.
is the formation and imposition of hierarchies are the most significant cause of disease and problems.
Yeah.
People
Social
say good
problems.
nutrition. I
Yes.
don't care what nutrition you have.
Mhm,
You're married to a rotten, lying cheat.
mhm,
Your good
mhm.
nutrition is going to go out the window and you're going to be sick
Yes.
because you're in a rotten hierarchy.
Yes.
So,
I think many of the psychological and social problem, the main cause is the wrongful hierarchy. When you at the peer to peer or in a good hierarchy, then most of the problem, social problem and psychological problems, your mental problem and your physical.
right.
Once you are not mentally unwell, then you won't be. It would start impacting your body. It's important to have a rightful hierarchy and peer-to-peer relationship. So
Yeah,
your final
frequently,
thoughts.
I would
Your
say, and
final-
this I studied
Mhm,
psychology,
mhm,
I would say that a good proportion of mental illness or
mhm,
dysfunction is
mhm,
a result of a wrongful hierarchy, either at
mhm,
work or at the family
mhm,
or in the neighborhood or in the
mhm,
nation. Wrongful hierarchies cause mental illness. And a
mhm,
psychiatrist is not going to normally accept that because they want
mhm,
to say it's chemical imbalance, which has never been proven. And they don't want to recognize wrongful hierarchies because a psychiatrist could be a wrongful hierarchy
mhm. Yes,
in which
they
you're
are
posing
imposing the.
wrongful drugs
Mhm,
and wrongful values. I mean, a
mhm,
person may be mentally ill because they're married to a horrible spouse, or they may
yes,
be mentally ill because they're poor and live in an area of high crime, which
mhm,
produces a lot of stress and maladaptive behavior. There
yes,
are social and psychological reasons. This is where we're back to Maslow, where
mhm,
if we have a wrongful hierarchy, there's
mhm,
going to be mental stress.
yes,
The solution is not a drug. The
mhm.
solution in
Is
that case is moving away
is
from that hierarchy and trying
mhm,
to establish a better hierarchy.
mhm. Yes, indeed, and I think we have discussed many important things. We started our discussion from the Maslow's theory of need or need theory, Maslow's hierarchy pyramid, and then we categorize hierarchy And finally, the solution is to get away from the wrongful hierarchy. It is impacting your peace of mind and soul. Then, if once you are mentally unwell, then it would impact your health physically. And if you have any questions, just leave it in the comment box below. I'll answer it to you. I will get back to you as soon as I can. And thank you, Linda. Thank you, Jackie. Wrongful hierarchy, final comments. Wrongful hierarchy produces much stress and anxiety, which impacts us emotionally and physically. Absolutely right. And thank you for your comments. And thank you, Linda. Thank you, Jackie. And thank you, other people, for joining us, for your wonderful comments. And I'll see you next week with some other topics. And thank you, Ed, for your time.
Okay.
And have a good day, good night, wherever you
All right.
are.
Okay. Bye, everybody.